guys like my e-girl outfit? I dressed up for the occasion. That's far too hot for me to be drinking right now. Anyways, hello everybody. Welcome back. So, let's start by addressing the elephant in the room. I did in fact private all of my old videos because I hated them and they were horrible. But here I am again, so you know, can't keep me away for too long. So, just a few housekeeping things before I begin. Some pretty big life changes with me. I am now living in England, so you know, whatever the fuck. Yeah, no, I emigrated here to study illustration because art, ironically enough, it is in fact cheaper to go to school over here than in my own country, especially since I live on the West Coast. Holy shit, California schools are expensive. Lockdown is a thing, coronavirus is a thing, you know, we're all out here just trying to survive. Some of us are thriving, some of us are not. Can you tell which one I am? Anyways, getting into what this video actually is. So, as you can see by the title, I am going to be drawing what Corpse Husband's music sounds like. That's a very confusing statement, but I will explain, obviously. So, first of all, I will be drawing this song.
Choke me like you hate me, but you love me low-key. Wanna date me when you fuck me.
Pretty spicy stuff, not gonna lie. His music kinda slaps. The reason I chose that song is just because it's obviously the most recognizable, and also I will not be playing the full version in this video. I will be linking all of his SoundCloud, Apple Music, YouTube, everything in the description so you can go listen to it on his stuff, because even though I have no viewers, on the off chance that this does blow up, I would like to give credit where credit is due, especially to creators, considering I am an individual who creates art stuff on the internet, even if my art is different from his. So, yes, go listen to his music, check it out. Not a third fucking YouTuber with 30 subscribers plugging someone with 5 million. Okay, so now I need to explain myself. So I have synesthesia. For those who did not take 2 useless years of psychology in high school, synesthesia is the phenomenon when your mind mixes up 2 senses in your head. So for me, it is audio and visual. So when I hear music, I see colors, and when I see certain colors, I hear noises. And just like everything else in psychology, synesthesia is a spectrum, and I fall on the very low end of the spectrum, thankfully, so it's not particularly debilitating for me. There are certain colors that I avoid, specifically this shade of periwinkle. It sounds like a 6th grade orchestra doing very out of tune scales, and I literally cannot handle it, like, at all. I just, yikes, no. Also, literally any color scheme from the 1960s. Jesus Christ, what is wrong with them? It hurts my ears so much. So there is a little bit of rhyme or reason for the way that it works for me. For me personally, pitch is related to value. So the lighter a color, or well, it usually goes the other way. So for the higher pitched a sound is, the lighter it's going to be in terms of color, and the lower pitched sounds are going to be much darker. So obviously Corpse's music is going to be very, very dark colors. Yeah, saturation and hue are a little bit more difficult to explain. I have noticed there is some relation to certain audio specific things, but I don't know enough about the music to explain exactly what those are. I know that voices that are more like gravelly, like mine is, or like Corpse's is, tend to be much like cool. They tend to be more cool tones, whereas smoother voices tend to be much warmer. So for example, Hosier, his voice is always turquoisey green, quite deep green. I'll put a color that best represents it. And even though it may like go lighter or darker, it's always going to be that color. Corpse's voice is always this very, very deep purple. I'll put this up here. It's a very pretty color, so yes. And when he sings though, he does pitch his voice down and it actually goes to black, which is impressive because that means it's very deep. So yeah, you end up with a lot of blacks in his music, with some accents of lighter colors and a few other hues thrown in. So another thing that happens for me when I listen to music is that sometimes I get very clear images of what that music looks like. That's not as easy to explain. That's more just, I think, my art brain interpreting the colors that I see, and along with the like general mix of like what's being said lyric-wise and just the vibe. I don't really know how else to explain it. It's just the vibe. So for example, here's some other work that I've done based on songs. So I'll put captions up. And so as you can see, I almost always have people in my interpretations of music. I'm not really sure why. I think it's just because I personally prefer to draw people. I don't do a lot of landscape or abstract art. I mostly focus on individuals or groups of people, but usually individuals. So that one is a little bit more just me being an artist and making things look good. So for this song in particular, I have already done some thumbnail sketches and taken some notes. I will put those up on screen now, so you can look at them as I look at them, and I will be getting my physical copy. So as you can see in the top left-hand corner, I had a pretty clear idea of what I wanted to draw right away. Usually for me, if something is a good song, in my opinion, I have a very clear image of what it looks like right away. And Corpse's music is like that, so I swear to God, someone keeps fucking knocking on our door. Go away. Ignore the horrific drawing of the person on the top. Oh my God, it's so bad. I hate everything about it. And then down below it is the face that I've chosen to go with. I haven't drawn the outfit yet because I'm lazy, but he is going to be dressed like an e-boy, of course. I'm not going to go super in-depth with the process and the design ideas right now. I will do that in the speed paint. But just real quickly to go with the color palette, so most of his music is black, but there is a lot of very deep maroony reds and deep purples. There are some splashes of lime green, like neon-y lime green, which I will be making the color of the fire. And then there is shockingly some pink as well, like peachy pink, which I did not expect to hear. But I'm not really sure how to incorporate that, so I might omit it. If not, I might try and make it a highlight color somewhere along the lines, but it is very, very brief, so it was just very shocking, so I wrote it down. I like how I'm pretending to be an e-girl, yet I'm sitting here drinking green tea out of a flowered mug with fairy lights on behind me, but you know. So that being said, I hope you enjoy this video, and let's get into it. So hopping right into it, of course I was listening to Corpse's music the whole time as I drew. As you can see, I imported photos of my initial pencil sketches and used them as my base, because what's the point of redrawing something that you've already drawn? So here I am just refining it and digitalizing it just because it's easier to see when it's all in one color. I use round marker, and I'm on Procreate for iPad Pro throughout this. I have access to Photoshop now. I didn't used to, but I'm not familiar enough with it to comfortably use it yet, so maybe sometime in the future I will do a speed paint using Photoshop, but not right now. As you can see, I was just kidding. So there I flipped it in order to check the anatomy, which I kind of did very lazily because I didn't feel like it. Here I am just blocking in the hands. So I'm going to talk about my design ideas real quickly. So initially I wanted to do something with like thousands of hands in the background, like reaching for the character in the center, but then I realized that I would have to draw all those hands, so I decided 6 is enough. Also, I think that it turned out just fine with just the 6 hands. And then, as you can see, I have like these eyeballs overlooking the character and the hands, and you can't see it right now, but I'm going to add green flames everywhere. I'm not really sure why. A lot of my artistic decisions I can't really explain, which my art teachers would be very disappointed in me for that, but you know, it is what it is, and sometimes you just can't explain why you choose to do the things that you do. So here I am just designing in the outfit. I basically just went with the most e-boy outfit I could come up with. I will admit I kind of hate the pants that I chose to use. They sort of give me not so great 90s anime vibes. So yikes. But you know, it is what it is, and they get mostly covered by flames in the end anyways. So yeah, here's me just refining the sketch a bit. I was gonna initially put in like a design on his sweatshirt, but I decided not to because I didn't feel like making it. Also, I had a headache the whole time, which was really fun. Just love that for me. Here I go through pretty much every single pen that Procreate offers to try and figure out which one I want to use. You'll see that I eventually settle on the marker pen, I think. And then I hate it, so then I just use the one that I always use, which is Gensinki ink, I think is what it's called. So yeah, here's where I try out the marker one, and then it was just too thick and toothy for me, so I chose the one that I always use, which is this one. By zooming out, I was just checking how pixelated it would look, and it doesn't look that bad when it zooms out, so I decided to go with it. Because the issue with some Procreate brushes is because they aren't like Photoshop and they don't have infinite pixels, when you zoom in and out, sometimes you can see that the pixels that you thought were going to be not as visible when you zoom out are actually quite visible. So yeah, that's something I always like to check. But yeah, no, this is pretty boring. I'm just doing the inks real quick. Oh yeah, so the face for the character. So as you could see, initially I had designed like a very smug looking character, but then I sort of went with this bored face instead. Also, I would like to point out that the character that I designed is not how I imagine Corpse to look. I do not really think that you can ever properly imagine the way that somebody looks just from their voice. This is just a character that corresponds with the song and how I imagined that the song's face would look, which doesn't really make much sense, but it makes sense to me. Yeah, and that also brings me to a point that I've been thinking about a lot with, I know that there's like a lot of hate towards Corpse for not showing his face in videos, and I have some very strong opinions about that. First of all, my back do be hurting. First of all, I personally don't think that content creators owe their audience anything, especially not face reveals or personal information, because, I mean, they are choosing to put their life on the internet. They should at least have control over what information they do and do not share with their audience. Also, you know, I personally am a very private person. I don't like to share a lot of things about myself, even with people that I'm very close with, and that's just something that makes me feel safer. And if I imagine that Corpse is probably the same way, where he probably chooses not to share his face because it makes him feel safe, and obviously he's in a different position than I am, but I understand where he's coming from, and I understand the decision that he made, and I also respect that his decision is what it is his decision to make. Yeah, that's where I mentioned that the anime pants, yikes. And I think that the fact that people are pressuring him to share information about himself that he doesn't want to share is just really disgusting, and it's just so entitled and wrong, and it genuinely gets me like fired up to think about, because I'm like, why? You know, like, what's the reason? Why do you need to know what he looks like in order to like enjoy his content? I mean, come on. Just let the guy live. Jesus Christ. Anyways, that's my rant over. Here I spent about fucking forever on these goddamn bootlaces, only to cover them up later, which is so much fun. I love doing that. Yeah, the boots ended up a bit chonkier than I was anticipating, but I didn't really feel like changing their design, so I just stuck with it. They're kind of like Doc Martens, but like the really thick Doc Martens that I want, but I don't have. Also, I hope that you can't hear my computer hyperventilating in the background of this, because there's literally no way to get around that, so if you can, I'm sorry. Yeah, there's me doing the laces again, and then I just finish that off. Flip it one more time for reference. There were some issues anatomy-wise, but I did not feel like fixing it, so I didn't. So now I'm doing the hands and everything. I actually quite enjoy drawing hands, which is, I know, a controversial opinion. These are not, like, my most stylish hands that I've ever drawn. I'm much better than this. I just wanted to do some quick hands just to have, because I do put some filters on them in the end that makes it not as important that they look perfect. But yeah, I don't know why, I've just always really liked drawing hands. Maybe I have a hand fetish, who knows. No, I'm just kidding. It's just a thing. I think that people's hands say a lot about them. But, you know, these hands do not have a person to say anything about. They just exist on their own, so I guess that is kind of counterproductive, but whatever. So for these eyes, the idea I was going for was sort of like this all-seeing... I mean, there are some symbolic reasoning now that I've had time to think about it, but I don't want to go too in-depth because it might reveal something about my psyche, which is not something I would like to have on the internet. So it's up to your own interpretation, how you would see it. So here I am trying to incorporate that pink that I heard, but then I ended up changing the saturation and, what's the other one? The saturation and value a bit, just to make it much more washed out, because in this, the character, in my mind, the character is quite sickly and pale and washed out looking for no particular reason. I don't know why. It just is the way it is. I have like this habit of drawing characters that look like they're inches from death and haven't slept in months, and I don't know why, but you know, it is what it is. I guess that's just my type. If you haven't slept in 6 years, I will marry you. And if you have daddy issues, I will marry you. Okay, that was more information than you needed. But yeah, so a trick that I always like to use when digital painting, and just painting in general, is that I never use harsh whites for anything except for when I have really heavy highlights. And even then I try and do really, really light colors of whatever color I'm highlighting. So I made his eyes green for, you know, funsies, and also to bring in that green color. And the only shading that I did on him was just some really basic cell shading with a desaturated darker tone of his skin, just to kind of give him a little bit more depth. And I didn't really think it was necessary to shade the darker parts of the clothing because it wouldn't really show up anyways, and I kind of liked the no shading look. It really kind of made it look a bit more comic booky and flat. Here I am coloring the laces because I forgot to do that. And I'm coloring them almost exactly the same color as the shoes, which made it real fun. And then I'm just doing in those grommets, and highlighting the metal. Metal is something that I think is very fun to color if you know how to do it, but when you don't know how to do it, it's a bitch. So now I'm moving on to the hands. I'm just using the same skin color as the character. This could be interpreted as either the character's hands are the ones that are reaching out to him and trying to pull him under and drag him in, or it could just be because I'm lazy and I wanted to have a more cohesive color palette, which is probably the more likely answer. Yeah, that's the thing. So yeah, it's just pretty basic coloring in. One thing that does bug me about Procreate is that you can't use the fill tool on layers that are empty. So I have to manually outline where all my inking is in order to use the fill tool. Here I am trying to do the outline, but the line kept being too thin, so I kept having to find the spots where it was leaking out, and then eventually I would just color it in manually, which was a bitch. I hated it. It was so annoying. This is where I complain about it. But yeah, so the color that's leaking out of the hands is like a really, really deep red, which is a little bit hard to tell when you look at it, especially on this neutral tone, which, by the way, I just put the neutral tone down for color relevancy, just to make it easier to see the darks and lights. It's just a 50% between gray and white. I mean, between black and white, of just a color that I did not use in my actual drawing. Here I am doing the eyes, so I wanted them to be very, look as if they weren't there physically, but that they were more in the character's head, so I just sort of blocked in the colors, and then I used the Oriental brush, which sounds wrong to say, but that's what it's called, to basically smudge out the color and make it look really toothy and really painted and almost feral. I also wanted to make sure that the eyes looked like they were not the character's eyes, like it was something else that was watching him. So you'll see I make them red instead of green, just to add that extra contrast, because red and green are complementary colors and his eyes are green, so color theory and shit, all that good stuff. I know art. I study art. Haha. But yeah, so here I am making them red. I didn't actually technically hear any bright reds in this song, but I did use it just for some highlights, just to add some pop and to sort of bring out the values a little bit more. See, there we go. But yeah. So now that that stuff is done, we get to go into the fancy bit where I do all the fire. So I use that same brush that I used for the eyes, and I just pretty much, so I made the background black, or almost completely black. I think it's a slightly gray. And then I just splodged in a bunch of fiery looking stuff with embers and everything, and I did some in the foreground and some in the background so that it would have depth.
and I use some slightly lighter greens to add some more depth. And then the rest of this is just me futzing around with rim lighting. I use that same green color on screen mode, and I just go over the top of literally everything, and I just scribble it in with the round marker tool that I use for sketching, and for coloring as well. So yeah, I wanted it to look really like feral and really, I keep using the word feral, but that just doesn't sound right. I want it to look very like wild, I guess, and unhinged. That's the word I'm looking for. Unhinged, just like my mental state. Okay. So I did very like, I wasn't very precise with them. So then the rest of this, I mess around with curves a bit. You'll see first I put some halftones in just to like mess some stuff around, make it look like it's glitching. So I do that with the fire. I forget what it's called, but it's this really cool effect that basically does like the TikTok thing. And then here I just put in like a really, really subtle gradient in the background so that it's darker. It's like a vignette. And then there I was messing with curves just to make the colors more cohesive and look kind of more bougie. That's not a good explanation. I messed with gradients on the eyes, but I didn't like any of them, so I just changed the curves a bit so that there were more range of value and stuff. And then I pumped down the saturation the opacity, and then here's the finished piece. Yeah.
Alright, sorry, I had to change my position because of daylight. The sun sets at 3:30 here, so that's fantastic. But I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope that it was at least interesting to see how I see music. If you would like, subscribe. You don't have to. I have no guarantee that I will continue to make videos. If you would like to see me draw another YouTuber's music, just let me know in the comments below, because I would like to. It's interesting and it's a good drawing exercise. If there's anything else that you would like to see me do, or any questions that you have, again, just leave it in the comments. And give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. Also, I don't remember if I mentioned this earlier, but I'm wearing my gamer shirt to prove that I am an authentic gamer. But anyways, see you next time.